First of all, George Freeman, Member of Parliament from Norfolk in the UK. George is also an advisor on life sciences to the Minister of State for Universities and Science, the Honourable David Willetts. So please come up. And then we have our second panelist, Professor Chas Baumtra from University of Oxford, who was trained in biochemistry and physiology at the University of London some time back, and he's now worked before his present position for GlaxoSmithKline for about 2 decades, and involved in progressing more than 30 candidates into the clinic within several clinical indication fields. Please. So, with that very interesting background that we were provided, we're of course curious in Sweden on how did this come about? How did you, let's say, strategize and come to the rationale, and how did you then conduct what you've done so far? So we'll begin with the Member of Parliament here, please.
Well, Carl, thank you. But perhaps if I just a minute or two the background of how we got to it, and
yes,
then the measures, it would be very interesting to share. First of all, I just wanted to thank you and Governor and all of you for this opportunity. It's a real pleasure to be here. My first trip to Sweden. I have on my wall at home as a sailor and a Norfolk man a wonderful navigational chart of the Hanseatic League. It's a 17th century chart with the fold in the middle. And there's a little village in Norfolk called Cly, which is now a very little silted up harbour, very attractive tourist destination. Cly is marked, it's the only place in East Anglia marked, and it shows the whole of the Hanseatic nation, the Baltic states, Copenhagen, right up to St. Petersburg. It's a reminder that this northern part of Europe was essential in driving a lot of the big changes that led to European exploration and discovery around the world, and there's still a repository of a lot of expertise. It's also pleasant to be here because Sweden is, in the life sciences, a very, very important nation. The Karolinska needs no introduction or commendation further from me. My first biotech company I was involved with, we were desperate to put in place a collaboration with the Karolinska, and it was a great pleasure for us this morning to be there. It's also, of course, the home of the Nobel Prize, and of course it's also the place I remembered where the first pacemaker was developed, and has a long history of really pioneering work. It's also a place with a great cluster, and a country that faces a lot of the same challenges we do: an ageing population, and a very strong industrial base in electronics, in automotive, and some very interesting potential for crossover of disciplines into this fabulous life science cluster. So on behalf of David Willetts, who I am really a spokesman for, he would have loved to have been here today. He's with the Prime Minister on his way to Brazil, and sincerely sent his very best wishes for this afternoon. Briefly, what are we trying to do with the life science strategy? Well, I should say I came into Parliament 2 years ago. I used to have a proper job. I was 15 years in this fabulous sector, 4 years in venture capital in the 1990s, 4 years running a biotech in Cambridge, which we sold to Paradigm and then ultimately acquired by Takeda, and then 6 years running a little translational medicine, corporate finance, consulting business in Cambridge. And I had the great pleasure in the last 6 years of working with most of our academic health science centres and our biomedical research centres. And I declare myself a card-carrying translationalist. And I brought that perspective in to government. By the way, I commend you on the coalitionism here. We have a coalition as well in Britain. It's blue and yellow, and I notice all your folders today are immaculately organised. So government arrived, coalition government, with a very strong commitment to science, and like governments do, tended to be quite complacent about the life science sector in some ways. Take it for granted, it's a fabulous sector, very important. And then Pfizer announced the closure of their plant at Sandwich, which of course wasn't a surprise to anyone in the industry, but was a shock to this new administration grappling with a horrific debt problem in Britain and a sustainable economic growth challenge. And I was lucky enough, it's one of the advantages of being in Parliament, you get to talk to the Prime Minister occasionally, to say to him, we must not react in the wrong way. We mustn't try and pretend this isn't happening. We mustn't send the industrial cavalry down to wrap the Sandwich plant in red tape. We must accept the dinosaur is evolving and accelerate that evolution. And we should take this opportunity to put in place a really ambitious plan for how the UK can help this industry reinvent itself. So the basic vision was, we're in a competitive global market. The question we should ask is, why would anyone want to invest in the UK? There are some big changes driving this sector, but we think of them as four big changes. The collapse of the pharmaceutical one-size-fits-all business model, the rise of the empowered patient, increase of patient demand, the glorious and relentless march of technology from biology to electronics, making possible new interventions, and the pressures on Western democratic healthcare budgets to meet the insatiable demand of an ageing population. And those four fundamental tectonic drivers are changing the market. Let's be honest about it. And our central challenge is to deal with the industry's central challenge. We must shorten the time cost, and time is the biggest driver of cost, the time cost of new medical innovation, and accelerate the rate of adoption. If we can do those two things, we'll make Britain a country that is contributing to the global healthcare industry. The rest will follow. Talent and money will come if we can make our economy. The key phrase is an integrated healthcare economy. We deliberately didn't want to be investing billions, mainly because we don't have billions anymore to invest, but also because that's the easy solution. We wanted to try and put in place the incentives, the structures which would let 1,000 flowers bloom. And there are 6 things we're doing. Firstly, we've protected the science budget. Secondly, we spend $1 billion a year through the National Institute of Health Research. The billion's important. More importantly, this money is going through and empowering the leadership of clinical scientists, the biomedical research centres and the academic health science centres. Crucial here that it's clinical academics who are controlling this money and building empires, but they're empires of clinical science with industry embedded. Thirdly, the Catalyst Fund. The aim is to, it's very nice to hear the comment earlier about kill your darlings. This is about getting 90 projects into hospitals in the next 2 years, £2 million funding. It's non-dilutive, it's not equity funding. If you have a clinical sponsor, a possible patient benefit, some IPR, and an industrial interest, it doesn't even have to be a company, it can be a project. 5 ticks, you're in. And we want to get 90 projects into hospitals, and some of them to fail, but we want to create a culture in which hospitals in Britain are working with industry to establish go, no go. Fourthly, on the industry front, the patent box, but also more importantly, an openness about, this isn't just about biotech and pharma. We want devices, diagnostics, e-health, data, all the new providers. We want to make the UK healthcare system a fertile place for innovators of all sectors, some which aren't even invented yet. Fifth, most importantly of all on the NHS, 2 major, I think they're revolutions, slow burn revolutions. On data, we're making available all our longitudinal cohort data through the Clinical Practice Research Database. So if you're looking for any anonymised patient cohorts in the NHS, dial 0800 CPRD and you will be able to access them. And secondly, we're doing what industry's long asked for, which is to be honest and transparent about the outcomes data. So the NHS Information Centre, you will be able, it isn't all available right now, but you'll be able to access information on treatments, results in the NHS at the moment. Industry's long said, how can we benchmark our innovation unless you're honest about what results you're achieving through the NHS? Well, we're being honest, and it's a painful and difficult process, but it's important if we want to create a genuinely open innovation economy. And the second bit on the NHS is adoption. We know we won't survive as a healthcare destination of choice unless we are better and quicker at adopting. So there's a slow burn revolution in adoption. We've introduced conditional licensing, we're introducing value-based pricing, which is a revolution in reimbursement around recognising risk and reward and value, and genuinely opening up and accelerating the way in which the NHS adopts innovation. That's the hardest bit of this in all. And lastly, for the UKTI, this is a global message. We want the world to know we're open for business, business for companies, for countries, for sovereign wealth funds, for academic groups to collaborate. And Sweden has a huge part to play in that, and that's principally why we're here today, to find out what it is we can do to collaborate better with institutes, companies, and this country. Because the Western and Northern European nations have got a huge amount to give to this revolution, but we need to collaborate to do it.
That was a full play, George. It sounds very easy. We'll come back to the
not easy.
The tricks of the trade in a few seconds, I believe.